Mildred was the church gossip and self-appointed arbiter of the church's morals, and she kind of kept sticking her nose in just about everybody's business. And several members, most of the members of the church, were unappreciative of her activities, but they were, quite frankly, afraid to say anything to anybody because of who she was. Well, she made a mistake one day when she accused George, who was a new member of the church. She accused him of being an alcoholic because she saw his pickup truck parked in front of the town's only bar one afternoon. And she commented to George and to the others there at church that everyone seeing it there would know what he was doing. George, a man of few words, he just kind of stared at her when she kind of jumped on him, stared at her for a moment, and then he just got up and walked out. I mean, he didn't fight with her, explain, deny. He just kind of walked away. However, later that evening, George quietly parked his pickup truck in front of Mildred's house and left it there all night. We're in a series on breaking free of the habits and the hurts and the hang-ups that mess up our lives. So the question that I had, as I was preparing this message today, the question that I had in regards to this message is, how do I get God's power in my life? And how do I get the power to make the changes that I know that I need to make in my life? How do I get God's power in my life, and how do I get the power to make the changes that I know that I need to make in my life? James 4:6 says that God opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Grace actually is the power to change. Grace is the power to change, and the Bible says that the key to power in our lives is actually something that we wouldn't think that it might be. The key to power in our lives is actually humility. And the key barrier to our lives, this is one we probably already do know, is pride. The Bible talks about two kinds of pride. We have to, when we read the Bible, we got to figure out which one they're talking about, but it talks about two kinds of pride. There is a good pride. Absolutely. We should have a pride in our life about, we should have self-respect. We should have pride of a job well done. We should have those kind of things that you work a job for how many years and you got to retire. That's a good pride. Absolutely. There's a good kind of pride, but there's also a bad kind of pride, and we know that one as well. When I think of the bad kind of pride, I think of conceit and arrogance and egotism. I love this quote that I found this week. Listen to this. It said, someone once said this: egotism is the only disease that when you've got it, it makes everybody else sick. Isn't that the truth? You know people, I know people that they make us sick when we're around them because of the egotism that they have in their lives. I tend to, quite frankly, I think of the rich and famous sometimes because they're not known for their humility, I would say. That's a fair statement. They're not known for their humility. I think about Muhammad Ali. Now, I agree that Muhammad Ali became a humanitarian later on in his life. But when he was a boxer, he was anything but a humanitarian. One time, Muhammad Ali was on a plane and he refused to fasten his seatbelts. True story. He refused to fasten his seatbelts, and the stewardess said, we can't leave until you fasten your seatbelt. So she went back around to him and she said, please, Mr. Muhammad Ali, will you please fasten your seatbelt? This was his response: Superman don't need no seatbelt. And she looked at Ali and she said back to him, Superman don't need no airplane either, so fasten your seatbelt. Kind of put him in his place. The Bible tells us that pride comes in all different kinds of ways in our lives, and it creates lots and lots and lots of problems as well. So first one is this: pride prevents me from growing. When I think that I've got it all figured out, then I don't have any need to learn, and I don't have any need to grow or become more. Truth is that when we think that we've got it all figured out, the motivation to do anything else then kind of ends. When our head starts swelling, our mind stops growing. So if you think, for instance, this message, if you think that you don't need this message today, you probably need this message today. That's really the truth. When we think that, that's pride. oh, I got it all figured out. I'm not prideful. Yeah, we all are prideful. We all have areas in our lives, weaknesses in our lives, situation in our lives that we need to work on. Proverbs 26:12 says, there is more hope for a fool than a man who is wise in his own eyes. I love the book of Proverbs. There is more hope for a fool than a man who is wise in his own eyes. What he's talking about there is the denial of pride. Pride causes us to deny that we have any weaknesses. You know, if I knew that I had, if I thought that I might have a weaknesses, then I would work on it. It's kind of that's kind of the attitude of pride that we have. Proverbs 10:17 says, anyone willing to be corrected is on the pathway to life, but anyone refusing has lost his chance. You know, pride keeps me from getting help as well. I think about people, you know, who have marriage problems and they will not get help. Why would they not get help if they know that they have problems in a marriage? You would think that they would get help. Why wouldn't they? Here's why. Pride. Simple as that. Or financial problems. When somebody has financial problems, then they won't go seek help. Why won't they? Pride. That's why they refuse to do those things. We would rather look smart than be smart, which isn't very smart at all. Second, pride poisons relationships. More so than anything else, I think. I think pride poisons relationships more than anything else. You know, at the root of all conflict and disharmony, if you search it back and look for it, actually, do you know what the root is? It is always pride. It's when we act with pride, we tend to be demanding and unsympathetic to people, and we think that we got to have it our way. You know, it's just got to be our way, which of course becomes obnoxious and rude, and which of course is why relationships gets destroyed by pride. More relationships are destroyed by pride than any other thing. I want to talk to you today about how to be happy and humble, because quite frankly, humility and happiness, they go hand in hand. So remember, again, God gives grace to the humble, and grace is the power to change. So first of all, the first thing that we need to do when we're dealing with this situation is we need to admit our weaknesses. God says in Proverbs, a man who refuses to admit his mistakes can never be successful, but if he confesses and forsakes them, then he gets another chance. You know, some of you heard about a teenage boy who admitted to his sister, he says, you know, I really have a problem with vanity in my life. And his older sister, you know, older sisters are with teenage boys, and she kind of smirked at him and looked at him up and down. It's like, how in the world could you possibly be guilty of the sin of vanity? And he said, well, it's because, you know, every time that I see a mirror, I stop and I look in the mirror and I say to myself, man, you're good looking. His sister laughed at him, as only older sisters do, and she says, man, that's not sin, my little brother, that's just ignorance. I know a lot of people who pray, Lord, you know, if I have sinned today, please forgive me. That we don't really have to ask that. I mean, really, let's be honest about that. We really don't have to say, Lord, if there is any sin in my life, please forgive me. There's sin. There are weaknesses in our lives. There are faults in our lives. There are failures in all of our lives. Some people say, well, when I confess to God, I can't think of anything to confess. Here would be my suggestion to that. Just start guessing, because sooner or later you're going to hit it. You will finally, sooner or later, hit it. Just get started. I mean, just get started. It'll be there. Humility is just being honest with ourselves. It's where we say to ourselves, you know what? I really don't have it all together. I really don't have it all together. I told somebody here this morning, I said, we're really good liars, aren't we? You know, we put on our Sunday faces and we act like, you know, everything's wonderful, but everybody in here has issues. Everybody in here has things that they're concerned about, prayer requests that they need to pray. Every single one of us in here do. We've gotten pretty good at putting on our Sunday faces, and I'm as good as anybody at it, honestly. The truth is we all have things that we have to deal with in life. That's life. That really is life. Number 2, I evaluate my strengths realistically. Yes, it's good to evaluate our strengths as well. Pride is based on a false evaluation of ourselves, but humility is actually based on the truth. Romans one of my favorite books in the Bible is Romans, and Romans 12:3 says this: do not think of yourselves more highly than you should. Do not think of yourselves more highly than you should. As you know, I begin my Sundays in the sanctuary every morning. I've told you this before, and I begin, right there on my knees at the altar. And so I'm there praying one morning. It's been a while back, and Hugh apparently hears me praying, and he hears my prayer. It's like, oh Lord, I'm nothing. Lord, I'm nothing. Well, Hugh was so moved by my prayer that he joins me right there at the church pews, and he starts praying. And here's what he starts praying: Lord, I'm nothing. Lord, I'm nothing. Next thing you know, Barb comes through the room. She comes into the sanctuary, kneels beside me and Hugh, and she begins to pray, Lord, I'm nothing. Lord, I'm nothing. So Hugh nudges me on the side, and he kind of nods over there, like to look over there at her, and says, now look who thinks she's nothing. Now, I didn't get that many laughs on the first one. Some people think that that's spiritual, but really it's a joke. That's a joke. It didn't really happen. Some people think that that's spiritual, saying I'm nothing. But really, to tell you the truth, you are something. You really and truly are something. You are so valuable, in fact, that Jesus Christ came to die for you. That's how much value, and that's how much something you really are. Listen, humility is not denying our strengths. It's not denying our strengths, but it's being honest about our weaknesses. That's really what humility is. The truth is, you have strengths. The truth is, I have strengths. Where'd you get them from? God gave them to you. God gave them to you. We took our grandson Ezra to Outback, and this is a true story. I tell stories, and I tell true stories. This is a true story. We took our grandson Ezra to Outback. My son loves Outback, and Ezra likes Outback as well, and he's a steak eater. He just loves steak. And so I asked him what he wanted to eat, and I knew what he wanted to eat. But anyway, he said, I want a 9-ounce sirloin steak, medium rare. That's what he orders when he goes out to eat. 9-ounce sirloin steak, medium rare. And I said to him, Ezra's like little. He's the littlest one in his class. He's just turned 11, but he's probably weighs maybe 60 pounds. I don't know, something like that. And so I said, are you sure you can eat a 9-ounce sirloin steak? I don't eat 9 ounces of sirloin steak. He said, yeah, I'm sure, because I'm much bigger on the inside than I am on the outside. And I got to thinking that pride is the exact opposite of that. Think about it. Pride is the exact opposite of that. Pride is where we pretend that we are much bigger on the outside than we really are on the inside. Galatians 6:4 says this: each one should test his own actions, then he can take pride in himself without comparing himself to somebody else. Paul is talking about the good kind of pride here. Again, we have to distinguish the two. Paul is talking about the good kind of pride here, and he's talking about self-esteem. The satisfaction of doing a job well done. But notice the danger. When he talks about that in that verse 6:4, he says that there's a danger there, and the danger is this: do not compare ourselves to other people. The way I see it, there are two dangers in comparing ourselves to other people, and here's what I see anyway. First of all, every time that we compare ourselves to somebody else, we can always find somebody else that we're better than. You know it, I know it. In fact, we usually, if we want to compare ourselves to somebody else, we usually compare them to somebody we think is a little bit lower than us. And here's the problem with that. When that happens, we get full of pride. Absolutely. Basically, what we're saying there is, I'm better than you. That's really what we're saying. I'm better than you. That's problem number one. The other problem that I see when we compare ourselves to others is this: we can always find somebody who is doing better than we are doing. If we really want to, we can find somebody who's doing better than we're doing, and here's what happens with that. We get discouraged. We get discouraged because they're doing better than we are. It goes back to, Lord, I'm nothing. So how can we be humble and happy at the same time? First of all, I think what we need to do is we need to admit our weaknesses honestly. We need to admit our weaknesses honestly. Yes, you have weaknesses, and yes, I have weaknesses. admit them honestly. And second, we need to evaluate our strengths realistically. The truth is we are all good at some things. Absolutely. You're good at some things. I'm good at some things. We're all good at some things. But we're also not all good at everything. I say that a lot too. Nobody's good at everything. Don't let them fool you. They're not. Here's one way to combat pride in our lives. I've learned this some time ago, and I'm reminded of this when I start to think I'm somebody. When we start to sense pride creeping up, here's what we do. We start to make a list of the things that we can't do very well. That'll humble you, because I don't know about you, but I can write page after page after page of things I can't do. Absolutely I can. When you start to feel pride creep up in your life, go ahead, sit down and write some of the things that you can't do. Galatians 6:4 says for us to test. I say that quite a bit as well myself. What I tell you is, and I say this too, is I think that we should do an honest evaluation of our lives on a regular basis. Where am I right now? That's what we're saying. Where am I? Where am I in respect to how am I doing? Am I growing? Am I becoming more Christ-like? That should be the question that we all have. Am I becoming more Christ-like? Do I look more like Jesus today than I did last year at this time? That's what we need to know about where we're growing or not. Number 3, enjoy my successes gracefully. 1 Corinthians 4:7 says this, For who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you did not receive? For who makes you different from anyone else? What do you have that you did not receive? Listen, everything that we have comes from God. I don't know what you have, what you don't have. That's not the point. The point is, whatever you have, everything that you have, every last bit of it came from God. It's as simple as that. You say, but I built this business with my own 2 hands. Well, let me ask you a question then. Where the heck did you get your hands from? Really? No, I thought this idea up all by myself. Where'd your mind come from? Every single thing that you have, every single thing that I have, God gave us. It's that simple. Listen, all the time, all your energy, all your talent, everything that you have came from God. All of it came from God. Every last bit of it. It's all a gift from Him. And here's the thing. Want to talk about a gift? It's all a gift from Him, but what we do with what we got from God is a gift from us to back to Him. That's really a better question. What am I doing with the skills and the talents and the gifts and the abilities that God has given me? What am I doing with them? Am I giving anything back to God? Yes, you have abilities. Yes, I have abilities. Yes, we have talent. And God is the source of it all, but what are we giving it back to Him? James 1:17, every good and perfect gift comes from above, and that is so true. Number 4 is serve others unselfishly. Real humility is not thinking less of yourself. Say that again. Real humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's just thinking about yourself less. See the difference there? And in so doing, quite frankly, we get to focus off of our problems and our needs and our hurts and our desires, and quite frankly, somebody else might need your thoughts more than you need them anyway. They probably are doing worse off than you're doing anyway. Philippians 2:5 says that our attitude should be the same of Jesus Christ. I don't really like to read that verse very much. Our attitude should be the same as Jesus Christ. And that's a big, tall order right there. Now, what is Jesus' attitude? Well, here, picture this. Can you imagine Jesus, traveling down the streets of Jerusalem on a camel with a bumper sticker that says, I'm number 1? Can you see that? I can't see that either. Do you want to know what the attitude of Christ was? Here's what the attitude of Christ was. Give your life away. That's what it was. Give your life away. That's why He came. And they say, Philippians 2:5 says that our attitude should be the same as Christ. We're supposed to give our life away. It's not all about you. Rick Warren, I love Rick Warren's book, The Purpose-Driven Life. Like the second sentence in his book says this, it's not all about you. And he sets the tone for the whole book. This book kind of says the same thing. It's not all about you. It's all about what we do for the Lord. With our skills and our abilities and our talents that God gave us, that's what it's all about. What are we doing with them? James 4:10 says, humble yourselves before God. You know, when I read that verse, I know I've read that. It's in James, so I've probably read it 25 times. I'll bet you that I have. But it's funny how sometimes it just stands out. Well, this week when I read that verse, it just stood out, and it reminded me, it's like this light went off in my head, and I finally realized that humility is a choice. That's right, humility is a choice. It is something that we choose to do or something that we choose not to do. It is a choice that we make. Did you know that not once in the Bible does it say that we are supposed to ask God to humble us? But it does say, humble yourself. It is a choice that we make. It's something that we do for ourselves. It's a way of choosing how we think. It's a way of choosing how we act, how we respond, what we say. It's a choice we make. I have to choose to think and act and speak and be humble. I have to choose to do that. Now, I will admit that this goes totally against what you're going to hear something totally different out there than what I just told you today. There's no question about that. The world teaches you a complete different idea than that. So then if that's the case, then why would I want to do it? There's always a reason why to do it. Why would I want to do it? Well, actually, there's a promise from God, and here it is. He says that if I will humble myself, then God will lift me up. He's a lot better at lifting me up than I'm at lifting myself up. He can take me far higher than I could ever go on my own. It says the more humble that I am, the more God lifts me up. That's a good reason to do it yourself. The truth is this: the more honest I am about my weaknesses and the more grateful I am about my successes and recognize that where they came from, the more God lifts me up. In Proverbs 6, God lists 7 things that He hates. 7 things that He hates. And do you know what the number one thing is that God hates? God hates a man with pride. Let's pray. Lord, I thank You for Your word today and for its truth. And Lord, a lot to learn today, but the truth is this: we get to choose whether we'll be humble or not. It's a decision that we make. We don't have to be better than everybody else. We don't have to talk about all the things we have accomplished to make ourselves feel better. Really, what You tell us to be is be a little more humble, won't you? Because everything that You have, I gave You. You would not have them if I didn't give them to You. So be a little bit more humble, can you? In Your precious name we pray. Amen.